Though he won the 2024 election, Donald Trump's popular vote lead continues to shrink as outstanding votes cast in the 2024 election are tabulated, undermining this notion that he won in a landslide or has some sort of widespread mandate to do whatever the hell he wants. And it's so bad that even legendary conservative Fox News hosts are cautioning Trump and MAGA against that sort of rhetoric. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I just want to make clear, Donald Trump has won the election. He won it freely and fairly. I hate that he did. We're going to be examining what went wrong for the Democratic Party and the left and the obvious implications, the sinister implications for the American experiment as a consequence of Trump's victory. But he did win. So even though the popular vote margin shrinks, it's not going to change the outcome because it's the Electoral College which ultimately determines who is the chief executive. And Trump did win that. And no matter how the votes, the final pending votes are tabulated, that will not change. However, since Donald Trump and MAGA won't shut up about this idea that, oh, he won in a landslide, he won this widespread mandate, it is important to point out that that's not true. Dave Wasserman from Cook Political Report is continuing to discuss this. Over 154 million votes now counted, and Trump's popular vote lead comes down to 1.65%. He won less than 2%, okay, by 2%. Donald Trump, as a matter of fact, more people voted for somebody else between Kamala Harris and third-party candidates and write-in candidates than Trump himself. He did not win a majority of the vote. He only won a plurality of the vote. And the reason this is so important is because with all these crazy unqualified cabinet nominees like Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, Fox News host Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence, one of the refrains that we're constantly hearing to justify this is, well, the American people gave Donald Trump a landslide victory, a mandate to do whatever he wants. And that's insane. Number one, it doesn't follow even if it's true. Even if it were true that he won not only the Electoral College vote, but the popular vote by a landslide, it still doesn't necessarily mean that the American people is giving Trump a blank check to do whatever he wants. But it's just not true that he won the popular vote by a landslide to begin with. And even Brit Hume, legendary conservative Fox News host and analyst, is cautioning MAGA to dial down that sort of rhetoric because it's just not true. It's unfounded.
On what Republicans over the weekend and into this week are taking from that win and how it translates politically here in Washington.
Well, this was a clear and convincing win for Mr. Trump, to be sure, and particularly when you think of all the stuff that had been thrown at him as he tried to be elected again. It's impressive. But whether it is a landslide producing a mandate is another matter. There's some counts now that say that, updated counts that say that he's slipped below 50% of the popular vote. Now, we don't elect people based on the popular vote, but it is one way to measure whether somebody has won a landslide. And another way to look at it is by states. Ronald Reagan won 49 states. Richard Nixon won, I think, 44 states. Barry Goldwater won only one state against Lyndon Johnson in 1974. Now, those were true landslides, allowing a candidate or a elected president to claim a mandate. I think the danger for the president here is that he might be, or his team at least, might make the same mistake that Joe Biden made. Joe Biden won a narrow victory, convincing perhaps, but narrow in 2020. And once he got control of the Senate and had control of both houses, he started thinking that he was going to be the new FDR and was going to pass all kinds of great social legislation, some of the results of which were an outbreak of inflation from which his candidacy and his campaign never recovered. So you have to be careful about these things. Real mandates are rare, and landslides are perhaps even rarer.
Yeah. Speaking of...
So that's from Brit Hume. Jessica Tarlov, Fox News liberal, whom we love dearly, she made this case earlier. I imagine it fell on deaf ears to a lot of MAGA Republicans who hate what she has to say. But this is Brit Hume. Brit Hume wanted Trump to win, even though he's probably not a member of the personality cult. He wants Republicans to win. He's a critic of the Biden administration and of Democrats writ large. And even he is trying to gently put it, you guys don't have a mandate. You simply don't. MSNBC put together a really handy graphic in this respect as well. So popular vote margin of victory goes back to President or Vice President Al Gore, who lost to President Bush in the 2000 election, but did win the popular vote. He won it by 0.5%. When President Bush won re-election in 2004 against John Kerry, he won the popular vote by 2.4%. When President Obama won in 2008, now that was the closest thing we've had in the modern era to a mandate, because he won the popular vote against John McCain by 7.2%. Donald Trump wishes that he was in the ballpark of that. When President Obama won re-election against Governor Romney in 2012, he won the popular vote again by 3.9, almost 4%, still pretty good. When Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016, she lost the election, but won the popular vote, she won it by 2%, which Donald Trump is now under that. Yes, he won by the Electoral College, affirmative action for Republicans, but the popular vote, which reflects much more closely the popular will of the American people, she won that. And she won it by a greater lead than Trump won the 2024 popular vote. When President Biden, I'm so glad Brit Hume brought this up, because this is the point I'm making. Well, President Biden won the House in 2020. He won the Senate in the runoff elections in 2021. He won the presidency in 2020. Was that a mandate? I mean, Joe Biden won more votes, 81 million votes. That's the greatest number of votes in American history. Donald Trump's popular vote margin, or rather the number of people who voted for Donald Trump, it's only a modest increase of about, I think, 3%, if I'm not mistaken. He's at like 76 million votes. Again, he won the election. There's no question. I'm not saying he's illegitimate. I'm just saying when it comes to the question of a mandate, well, by that metric, President Biden had at least twice the mandate that Donald Trump did. But Fox News and Republicans and Trump and MAGA Republicans were never saying, oh, so therefore Joe Biden has a mandate to do whatever the hell he wants. But you see the logic? They grade themselves quite literally on a curve. They didn't even say that President Obama had a mandate in 2008. What would a Democrat have to do? How well would a Democrat have to perform for a MAGA Republican to say that they had a mandate? I mean, if it was by the standards that they hold Trump to, then every Democrat, with the possible exception of Vice President Al Gore, had a mandate to do what they wanted. But that's not the Republican calculus. And I just think it's so interesting because, again, what we're seeing is this revision of history in order to justify the excesses of a second Trump administration before that administration is inaugurated. Again, Trump's not the president. But because he is proposing Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence, Pete Hegseth as the secretary of defense, somebody who, yes, was a decorated veteran, but not a decorated commander, right? He was not a general. He was not sufficiently or particularly high rank, so he doesn't have the administrative or leadership experience. He's just a Fox News host at this point. I'm not saying he's stupid. He graduated from multiple Ivy League schools. Again, but this idea that he has the administrative or leadership skills and experience needed to run the Department of Defense with 2 million employees, Matt Gaetz, who, yes, is an attorney, but again, morally unqualified, and I would argue experientially disqualified as well. But what we hear is he won. He won. As a matter of fact, when Piers Morgan debated Kyle Kulinski, and we did a video about this yesterday, when they talked about his cabinet appointees, he's like, you know why he did that? Because he can, as if that's some sort of justification. Again, well, Piers, Joe Biden could have appointed whoever, or tried to appoint whoever the hell he wanted. Would you have accepted that if he tried to appoint Whoopi Goldberg from The View? Because I know Piers Morgan hates The View. And Democrats came back and said, well, Biden can appoint whoever he wants because he's the president. Would you accept that? No, you would say, well, yes, of course, he has the right to try to appoint whoever he wants, but is it prudent? Is it the right thing to do? No, of course not. But again, what we keep hearing is Trump has the mandate, but he doesn't. Trump claims he has an unprecedented mandate. Experts say it's actually very small. This is from The Independent. As the votes were tallied, oh gosh, please get rid of this. Oh no. I love how they make the X. There we go. As the votes were tallied and the Electoral College map turned red, Donald Trump declared to supporters at his election night victory party that the American people had given him an unprecedented and powerful mandate. I can't believe he used the phrase unprecedented. So stupid. A wave of cabinet nominations consisting of MAGA loyalists and fringe figures in the days that followed showed he really believed it. There has to be no reaching across the aisle. But Trump's margin of victory, historically speaking, is very small. Though he may have won handily in the Electoral College by 312 to 226, he is estimated to win the popular vote by around 1.6%. That puts him in 16th place among post-Second World War presidential victories, just behind Jimmy Carter, but ahead of his 2016 performance when he lost the popular vote but still won the keys to the White House. Again, Trump can claim the title of being the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. That says more about the quirks of the Electoral College and the popularity of Republicans than it does about the man himself. Quote, I'm not sure that other presidents would read this as a mandate, but Donald Trump is a different case, says Mark Updegrove, a presidential historian and CEO of the LBJ Foundation. Quote, whether Trump has a mandate or not doesn't matter. He's going to tell you he has a mandate because he wants to do what he wants to do. He would exploit any advantage. It wasn't always this way. Updegrove noted a contrast between Trump and President John F. Kennedy, who proceeded with caution following his very close win in the 1960 election. Kennedy was very wary not to do anything that might look liberal or too partisan-oriented after he barely squeaked by in the Electoral College. Only two other post-war presidents have raised the notion of their mandate in their election victory speeches. President Johnson, who won the popular vote by a whopping 22.58% in 1964, said that he had been given, quote, a mandate for unity, for a government that serves no special interest, no business government, no labor government, no farm government, no one faction, no one group, but a government that is the servant of all the people. Now, think of that framing. LBJ was a Democrat. He could have said, yeah, hell yeah, I won the popular vote by 22%. That is a mandate, and so we're going to govern the Democratic way. Yes, we'll govern for all people, but it's going to be an exclusively Democratic agenda that I'm going to force on the rest of the country. By Trump's logic, he would have been well justified to do that, but even LBJ had the sense to go, okay, yes, I won, I'm the Democrat, it's my party in power, but I at least feel the need to gesture towards a unified group. And I should say, speaking of LBJ, he was the most legislatively successful Democratic president since President Roosevelt, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and President Biden has been the most legislatively successful president since LBJ. So there's a through line here. It's also interesting, too, going back to what Brit Hume had to say, is that, this idea that because Biden felt he had a mandate, he was going to do all of this enormous legislation. Well, he did, and he did much of it on a bipartisan basis. The infrastructure law that he got done in 1 year, that Donald Trump promised for 4 and failed to get done, and we're going to do a video about this because Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, is making the rounds to make the case that as more of these transportation and infrastructure projects are completed in the next year or two, Donald Trump is going to try to take credit for it. And so will Republicans. And it's incumbent on Democrats and the media to say, no, this happened on your watch, but you had nothing to do with it. It was because of the last guy, Joe Biden, that this got done. He should get all the credit. Democrats should get all the credit. You should get none of it. But we'll see what happens. But the fact of the matter is that infrastructure law, Biden got it done on a bipartisan basis. Biden got the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is the biggest piece of gun legislation in 30 years, passed. The CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT Act. So many of these things were done on a bipartisan basis. So Biden didn't govern really like he had an exclusive man. I wish that he governed more decisively in terms of, I'm going to pass this legislation even if Republicans don't support it, because he did win. So I want to be clear, Trump has the right to try to pass whatever the hell he thinks he can get done. But this idea that what he wants is a reflection of overwhelming popular consensus is just not true. Just tell the truth. You won, you're in power, your party's in power, so you're going to try to do what you want to do. Don't lie and say that everything you do, that when people voted for you, they were voting for Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General of the United States. There's no evidence to support it. And again, Donald Trump, as of now, is not winning a majority of the vote. He's winning nearly a plurality. So just, again, the more people talk about this whole mandate thing, the more I think we're obligated to shut it down, because it's a bad faith, dishonest talking point and not a reflection of reality. Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.